Hey gang, Scott here, back in my dining room with another Top 10 Tuesday list for you. I'm a bit late, of course, putting this up. It's already Thursday, but of course the Joker 5150 and James have already put up their videos on their top 10 favorite action movies, and I wanted to give mine as well. They didn't specify any particular stipulations as far as what the criteria was, and both the guys included a few science fiction movies. Terminator 2, for example. They also had Raiders of the Lost Ark, which can be considered an action movie with fantasy elements, and the original Die Hard, which is a straight action picture. So it's sort of a wide range there, and I had a little trouble narrowing down my choices because of that. So I decided instead to come up with two lists. One, the top 10 straight action movies with no sci-fi or fantasy or comic book character elements to it, and the other that allowed that. So let me start with the straight action first. My number 10, The Bourne Supremacy, the second of the three Jason Bourne movies starring Matt Damon. I like the first one, hate the third one, but the second one is really the crown jewel. It's got great action in it, it's got wonderful characters. Joan Allen lends a lot of class to the movie, has terrific fight scenes. Like I said, I like both the first and the second one, but I think the second one is just slightly superior. My number 9 is Tango and Cash. Tango and Cash is an action comedy that came out in '89. It stars Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell, and it is an almost parody of an action movie. I say almost because there's lots of joking around and poking fun at cop buddy movies, but it isn't a flat-out parody the way that like Airplane or The Naked Gun is. Just little hints there and there that nobody really ought to be taking this seriously. It's a fun picture. I love Kurt Russell in this movie. During the setup for the movie is they get framed for a murder, and when they go on trial, there's people testifying against them, and one of the guys basically describes how Kurt Russell's character, Cash, while interrogating him, put a chair on his chest and then sat on it. And Stallone turns to Kurt Russell at the defendant's table, and he's just like, "You did what?" And he says, "I couldn't find a piano." I love that line. It's directed by Andrei Konchalovsky, who did Runaway Train, which is a terrific picture from the 80s as well, with Eric Roberts and John Voight. I wouldn't necessarily call that an action picture, but it's got a lot of action in it. There are a few movies that are actually disqualified from that, primarily because although they have action scenes, I really can't call them action movies. My number 8 film is Three Kings. Here's another movie that's barely an action movie. It takes place during the Iraq War. You've got George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg, Ice Cube, and Spike Jonze, and they're off looking for the gold bullion that Saddam Hussein has hidden away in one of the local towns. And then they get into trouble with that. They lose some people. It's this whole sort of adventure that takes place in the desert where they sort of go off the grid. It's David O. Russell's film from 1999. I really like a lot of David O. Russell's movie. This is probably my favorite of his. Number 7, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, directed by Doug Liman and starring Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Smith is the closest that anyone has come to really making an American John Woo movie. Even John Woo himself really didn't do that. With movies like The Killer and Hard Boiled, you've got this sort of classic setup where you've got two guys, one of whom is played by Chow Yun-fat, who are adversaries. And they're fighting each other, they're hunting each other down, but eventually they realize they have a mutual adversary, so they team up to fight that guy and all of his minions, in which case you have the big shootout where they mow down tons and tons of henchmen over the course of like 10-15 minutes. And that's what happens in Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Face Off, I think, is John Woo's best American film, but still it has its problems, and it doesn't follow that quite the same pattern. It's a fun movie, it's a good movie, but I have to say Mr. and Mrs. Smith is superior. My number 6 is 3:10 to Yuma, which is a remake of a 1950s Western. The new one was directed by James Mangold, stars Russell Crowe and Christian Bale. It's just a flat-out terrific movie, and has good suspense in it and really good acting in it, particularly from Russell Crowe. This is actually the second Western he's been in. The other one was The Quick and the Dead. That's not really an action movie either. It has shootouts, but not really, it's not really reliant on action as much. But yeah, terrific movie. Made one of my top 10 lists for that year. Another Russell Crowe movie, Gladiator, with Ridley Scott directing. Of course, everybody knows about this movie. It's a fantastic movie, one of Ridley Scott's best. Good old-fashioned classic story, and lots of really great set pieces in it, and a great score too. One of Hans Zimmer's most awesome scores. My number 4 picture, True Romance. This is another one that just barely squeaks into the action category, but it does have, you know, some good set pieces in it. It's a script written by Quentin Tarantino, directed by Tony Scott. Tons of great acting in it, lots of great character actors in this movie, and it's more dialogue driven than the average action script, but it does have some good set pieces in it, so I kind of had to put it on there just because I like the movie so much. My number 3 pick is John Woo's The Killer. It was one of the movies he made in Hong Kong before he came to the US and made the Hard Target, the Van Damme movie, and then kept making more American movies. Chow Yun-fat and Danny Lee are the 2 main characters. One's a cop, Chow Yun-fat's an assassin, and the cop's hunting him down, but then they team up to take on the gangster. Just, you know, when this movie came out, I'd never seen any John Woo movies before. Came out here in the States in '91. And when we saw the trailer for this movie with just these extravagant shootouts, my friends and I were just like, oh my goodness, this looks like the most awesome movie ever made. That's pretty awesome. Hard Boiled itself is also really good, but I gotta go with The Killer. The Killer is just amazing. My number 2 favorite action picture, Kill Bill Volume 1. Not a big fan of Volume 2, but Volume 1 is amazing. It's just such an incredible movie. There's so much joy, so much love for movies in this whole picture right there. You can smell and taste in every single scene. And the fights are just incredible. I really like the scene in Volume 2 where Uma fights Daryl Hannah. But there's some awesome fights in this one, of course, especially the one where she takes on the Crazy 88s in the House of Blue Leaves. It's amazing, you know, and just overall, it's an incredible movie. My favorite movie from 2003. And finally, number 1, Die Hard by John McTiernan, starring Bruce Willis. You all know what that one's about. I don't think I need to say more about it. Hans Gruber, Alan Rickman, you know, everything about it is just awesome. Directed by John McTiernan, of course. And guess what? John McTiernan is finally making another movie. I think it's called Red something. I can't remember the title of it, but it's about mercenaries who go to take down a drug lord in Mexico. And he's been in prison recently, John McTiernan, some sort of security deal that he was involved in. But as soon as he gets out, he's going to be making that movie, which is going to be great. So then, another top 10 list, this one with genre elements in it, not straight action, but sci-fi, fantasy, and other stuff as well. Number 10, The Matrix by the Wachowskis, Keanu, Lawrence Fishburne, The One, you know, Morpheus, Hugo Weaving, Agent Smith, all that stuff. Really, really fun movie. If the Coen brothers made an action sci-fi movie, it would look something like that, I think. Or at least it would have at around the time of maybe the mid-90s when they made the Hudsucker Proxy. All these exacting camera shots and everything like that. It's just, you know, just a very, very well-made film. Number 9, The Avengers by Joss Whedon. Love it. Just such an entertaining movie. Really, really lots of fun. Number 8, Total Recall by Paul Verhoeven, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and probably his best movie as far as action films go. Yeah, such a fun movie, really kind of thought-provoking and way better than the remake with Colin Farrell, of course. Just incredible movie. Number 7, John Carter of Mars, the recent Disney film. Yeah, didn't do well, but still an amazing movie. Spectacular, wonderful effects. Really like it a lot. Starship Troopers, another Paul Verhoeven film, which is, of course, also being remade along with RoboCop and Total Recall. Man, Paul just can't get a break here. All this stuff, all of his best stuff is being remade. This one's really, really exciting and funny because of the way it satirizes the culture, the military culture, by casting bland, not really great actors as the main characters. And then you have guys like Neil Patrick Harris showing up for cameos and things like that. And Michael Ironside, you know, he's lots of fun. He was in Total Recall as well, of course. Then Aliens by James Cameron. Aliens is James Cameron's best movie. Yeah, such a great picture. Great cast of characters in it. Sigourney Weaver, of course, Michael Biehn, Paul Reiser, and Jeanette Goldstein as Vasquez. And Bill Paxton, of course. Bill Paxton. Terrific movie. Really, really great. I would have mentioned that as my favorite horror sequel for Kevin for his contest, but it's not really a horror movie. It's an action picture set in space with aliens. So there you go. Children of Men by Alfonso Cuarón with Clive Owen, Julianne Moore, Chiwetel Ejiofor, about the guy who basically has to escort the pregnant woman in futuristic London, futuristic England, where no one has had babies for years and years. keeping her safe. Really terrific picture, one of my favorites of 2006. My number 3, Batman Begins by Christopher Nolan. You all know about that one. I love that movie to death. My number 2, the original Paul Verhoeven RoboCop. Absolutely adore that movie. Such a great film. So funny and, you know, bloody and really, really great. And number 1, Raiders of the Lost Ark, which technically is a fantasy film because the way this ghost comes out of the Ark at the end and kills everyone. Yeah, but again, classic Spielberg, love it. Just love it to death. Couple of movies that I didn't include. Deja Vu, which is another Tony Scott movie. Really like that movie a lot. Not really an action movie. Too much time is spent basically looking at video monitors. It does have some good action set pieces in it, but I just made the cut. Also, V for Vendetta, not really an action movie. It has fight scenes in it, but mostly it's dialogue driven. And then there's Training Day, another movie which has action in it, but not really an action movie. One of my favorites from 2001, Denzel Washington, again, he's amazing in that movie. Then a couple of movies that almost made the cut, that qualified basically as action movies. But my lists weren't long enough to include them. Mission Impossible 3, which is my favorite of the Mission Impossible movies. Terminator 2, which I saw like 7 times in the theater, and has one of my all-time favorite action scenes when John is on his dirt bike being chased by the T-1000 in the tow truck, and then he's being chased by Arnold on the Harley. That's an incredible chase scene. And Face Off by John Woo. Those movies weren't quite good enough to make the top 10, but I wanted to mention them. I've got a link to James' video and the Joker 5150, his video in the description, so check them out. Movie Collector 666 is the other guy doing these, but I'm not sure if he's done his video yet, but I'll include a link to his channel. See you next week, and hopefully I'll have that top 10 list in on time. Later.